golfers like to change stuff when it's not working well. Tour players hate changing stuff no matter what. And so the more you get into having a good routine and training the routine, which is not entertaining, it's not fun to watch, it's not fun to practice necessarily, but it is highly effective.
Definitely paving the way for your success for your golf swing. So just to refresh, if you get the strong grip over here, strong left wrist at the top, club face shut, that's for the guys that can stay low and really rotate wide open coming into the shot.
Folks, something special is going down today on Big Boy Pants Golf. I've got famous golf YouTube instructor Mike Wilson on today.
If you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you like the video as well, and if you want to be notified every time I put out a new video, hit the bell as well.
We were supposed to actually meet up in person at Live Tucson, but he decided to walk the course while I hung out behind the 18th hole 2 days in a row. Poor Wi-Fi interception or phone connection. We never actually met up, but here we are right now, and we're going to discuss tons of swing theory. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself for the fans at home?
Thanks, Big Boy Pants Golf. Great to be on your channel, YouTube's hottest golf channel. Always great to be on if I can get on here. It's just hard to get on. You're so booked all the time.
It's sick.
I've been an instructor for about 30 years and very, very fortunate career paths. I was able to go through the PGA program quickly and get into working with David Ledbetter in the early part of my career, and then teach tour pros. You're always around tour pros with David Ledbetter. So I was able to work with tour pros right away, and that sort of launched my career forward. And worked for David for about 6 years out in Palm Springs, California, and now live in the Phoenix area.
Back here we are at the beautiful Weston Kierland Golf Club in Scottsdale, Arizona. And in this video, let's talk about how to fix that backswing that's getting inside and flat.
And just coach all levels of players now. But I've been very fortunate in my career just to have a launching pad like that, really in my late 20s. It was great.
And from David Ledbetter, he actually was pretty much the instructor of the 90s. Would you say that?
Yeah, so he and Jim McLean were sort of like spearheading the whole, even before Golf Channel was a thing. They were really sort of playing off one another. Like they would each write a book, sort of challenge each other back and forth. But those were like the two biggest names. Some people probably don't even know who they are, but Jim McLean and David Ledbetter sort of started the revolution through the 80s and 90s, and it just took off from there.
My feeling on this is you have David Ledbetter. He comes out with, he has his stable of students. Faldo is the big one, obviously. And then you have Jim McLean, known for the X Factor swing.
Right.
So that kind of started that whole thing of minimizing your hip turn and trying to maximize your shoulder turn.
Correct.
And then I feel like maybe David Ledbetter was like, let me one-up you with the A swing.
At this point, the club is hanging down in a very square position. If I just hung the club across my thumb and forefinger like this, you see that literally is a square club face, if you can see that.
Don't move your hips at all. Don't move your body. Have a butterfly grip and then just immediately cock your wrist and have almost no motion.
Yeah, it is amazing to see methods actually come and go. Because as we know, swing methods really, who can do the X factor other than a tour pro, right? I mean, who's flexible enough to actually turn your shoulders against your hips and to make any movement at all? The rest, us mortals, need to turn our hips to have any motion in the backswing. And then when you turn it into a technique like an A swing, anything that has a name to it, is probably going to fail after a little while. Because if you're trying to create a method, it's only going to work for a handful of people in general.
In terms of Jim McLean's X Factor swing, I believe Len Matisse was one of the poster boys.
Absolutely. He played great really up into the early 2000s.
Lost a Masters and a playoff to Mike Weir.
Correct.
I just wanted to show that I have general knowledge here.
Oh, yeah. That's deep knowledge right there. That's going back 20 years.
It's all up here. I mean, he also, had
impressive.
he not, he made like a triple or quadruple on the 17th of the players that one year was in contention. And then he buried the 18th. Just kind of a good feel-good comeback story. So that's my Len Matisse knowledge. He was actually doing some junior clinic in Pennsylvania many years ago. And I drove a few hours just to watch him teach kids. And I just stood back there and just watched him because I'm fascinated by the golf swing. Guy, couldn't be a nicer guy, pumped a bunch of balls down there. And then one of the kids asked about, how did you make the birdie on the 18th after, tripling or quadrupling the 17th? And I kind of cringed a little bit. And Len Matisse looked at me, a little bit of a dirty look. But I was cringing more. I was cringing more of the fact that this kid asked that. And I would like just enjoy the fact that Len Matisse is right there teaching you kids, and don't bring that stuff up.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little touchy subject, but good to make a birdie on 18, that's for sure.
Now, my question to you is, you've been exposed to so many different teaching methodologies. Do you have one that you use nowadays?
I really go off of impact and ball flight, because you can use video and try to compare a student to a pro and say, hey, look at here's this player, here's Tiger's swing and here's your swing, let's compare. But it really isn't fair to the player to do that. Chances are they're not going to hit many of those positions. But if you are trained in impact and ball flight, I had some great training with Jim Hardy, and of course just teaching for 30 years. You start to learn why the ball goes where it goes, even without a TrackMan, and understanding path and face and those kind of things. If you're teaching off of impact and ball flight, you will always be moving somebody in the right direction towards a more solid strike and better consistency. But then you still have to sort of consider, what is their build, what is their natural swing shape, are they more of an open face player, closed face player, strong grip, weak grip, to then make it sort of fit that player. But if you do try to just, shoehorn something in there, like you got to have a strong grip or a weak grip, whatever it might be, it's only going to work for some people. You really have to custom fit the player.
As you teach based upon impact and flight, how do the different, changes in the grip or posture affect impact or ball flight?
If you break it down, when you're changing anything, whether it's your head position, where your weight is, left and right, grip being stronger, grip being weaker, shoulders open, shoulders closed, all those elements, as you talked about, those elements will change impact. They all change the impact, but they only change impact in one of two ways. It doesn't change it in infinite ways. It only changes it in one of two ways. So, for instance, if I open my shoulders, I hit more down and left. If I close my shoulders, I hit more out to the right. But each one of those things you talked about either hits more fade or more draw, more up or more down. It doesn't simultaneously change it into a fade and a draw. It doesn't simultaneously hit a lower shot and a high shot. And so when people are trying to fix a draw and they're pulling from the wrong category, they say, well, I'm going to try to fix my draw by doing a bunch of things that create a fade. Well, it won't work. But if you happen to have, let's say you have 3 or 4 things all creating a fade, and you change one of them, well, you're just going to get less of a fade. Or if you have 4 or 5 things creating a hook, and you only change one of them, you're just going to get less of a hook. You're not going to cure your hook. So changing a lot of elements without realizing which list you're pulling from is dangerous. You have to know which list you're pulling from. Is the thing that I'm trying to change right now. Like if I copy if I'm doing my name a swing, if I'm doing my Brooks Koepka bowed wrist, how does that fit in with the rest of the stuff that I'm doing? It might work, it might not. But everything you change will change your impact. But like I said, it doesn't change it infinitely. It changes it in one of two ways. And that makes it easy to teach impact and ball flight, because if I see somebody's in too much of a slice mode, I can start removing slice elements and adding in draw elements until I neutralize the ball flight. Or vice versa. If they're hooking too much, I can start removing hook elements, or I can add a slice element. And that way I'm only changing one little thing at a time until we get the ball flight we're looking for. I'm not just giving them a method where you have to follow this protocol and check all these boxes. It's like, no, let's see how you're hitting it first. Let's start making slight adjustments until we get the ball flight that we want.
To me, it almost sounds like you got this delicious soup, but you want to make it more delicious. So you add some more ingredients, and then now you can bring out different flavors based upon, what else you add. Yeah,
and that's it. And if you can imagine, what if you have a golf swing that only varies in one or two elements per side, right? Let's say you're a guy who always hits it good, basically. Well, you probably have a very simple golf swing that doesn't vary hardly at all. But if you have a guy who takes it inside, up, loops it over the top, open face, comes over the top, leans back and slings it. Well, he's got so many elements of each category balancing each other out. He hits only one good shot like every millennia, So if you have too many elements conflicting, you can only time it up once in a while. So the point is to get your swing down to where it's so simple that you're always working on one or two things. All the time it's the same stuff. Like, when I work on my golf swing, it's always the same things I'm working on, but I always hit it straight. So because I boiled my swing down to where I don't have to work on all this other stuff. I work one or two into the same things all the time. So I always hit it straight. And it makes it easy because I'm not looking for the next best trick that comes along.
Keep it simple, sassy. In terms of Jim Hardy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, He is the one plane versus two plane
Correct.
swing theory guy.
Yeah.
And in the end, what is Jim Hardy's preference? Is it a one plane or two plane swing, or which type of body or person is the one plane more preferential for, or the two plane more preferential for?
Yeah, when you're one planing it and the club's going a little bit more around your body, face a little more square to shut, Colin Morikawa type swing, that type of a player. In the old days, this guy named Ben Hogan used to play golf. You've probably heard of that guy.
A little bit.
When the club goes around your body a little bit more, it's more of a one plane action and tends to be much more flexible. You have to be a more flexible person physically to make that swing work. It's tour pros do it a lot. LPGA Tour, PGA Tour, whatever it might be, Live Tour, you're going to see that one plane action just because people can do it. It's easy for them to do. The rest of us don't. We can't always do that. Sometimes that two plane up and down action, like Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, that old style. Patrick Reed these days is great with it. Bubba Watson's great with it. That more up and down is easier for us to do.
For players that have more of the two-planer or the upright Nicklaus action, be slightly strong is fine. Never want a wide open club face, but slightly strong to neutral grip. And then that paves the way for going back, letting it come a little more toe up, come down, and let it release.
Which pattern, the one plane or two plane, do you think produces more power?
Technically, the two plane is going to have a little more sling at the bottom, that face closing a little more rapidly. You can get some really good power out of that. But these days, with the fitness the guys have and the equipment, I mean, McIlroy's pretty much a one planer and crushes it at his size. You know, a lot of guys are hovering around one plane with that shut face, and they crush it. And so, but it's due to the physical training, a lot of it. But a lot of guys just, you know, that two plane action produces a lot of force. No question. The average player is probably going to hit it way farther with the two plane action.
So when you are taking a person who's a beginner and you test them for their, physical capabilities, their hand-eye coordination, how would you initially put on their hands on the club? Would you give them the weaker grip, the neutral grip, or a stronger grip, or do you let them just slap it on any old way and then you see, then let them swing and fix their swing after that? Is it grip first, or is it some kind of type of matchups? How do you get them in the right fundamentals in the beginning?
I'm going to watch them hit some shots first. If they're a beginning type player, I'll give them a stronger grip for sure, because I want to keep that club face from getting open and keep the ball from going to the right, which hits weaker shots. So if it's a more beginner player, it's going to be a stronger grip to try to get the ball going left, get more ball speed, all those kind of things. But if it's more of an advanced player, someone who's played a lot of golf, I am definitely going to watch their shot. I'm really going to see different clubs, hit a lot of wedges, mid-irons, drivers, and see where the ball goes, what the contact is, and then start making adjustments from there. Because some players can shut the face great with a weak grip, and others can, never get it shut with a weak grip. So you really have to figure out how the player's body is working. Do they have injuries? All those things really factor in to getting someone their most consistent swing. Most people can really create a consistent swing if they get those things right.
In terms of a weak grip getting to a square impact position at the bottom, do most people who squared up well do it with a bowed wrist, or are they rotating the forearm to have the toe turn through it faster? What do you consider the difference between squaring it up with the bowage of the wrist, or the rotating the forearm, or just straight up flipping it?
If you have an open face and you flip it, it's definitely not going to work.
Now, the secret to hitting shots with the right release, like we talked about, the right contact at the bottom, is the hands still have to be barely in front of the club head at impact.
You're going to get a very weak shot hitting it off the bottom of the club. You'll hit it thin all day. So you have to rotate the forearms, which tends to bow the wrist anyway. When that thing is rolling over, it tends to bow the wrist to the right amount. So I use a two-plane action. I don't have a lot of lag, but I have enough to hit it solid, hit it straight, hit it far. But I definitely am in this position when I'm coming in. I'm never getting a flip in there. So you do have to teach forearm rotation. Pretty much every swing has forearm rotation. It's a matter of when they rotate. The one planer is more shut, so he's going to rotate a little bit later. But that two-plane action, you're teaching him to rotate it through the bottom there for sure. Because
nowadays it seems like that's almost a no-no, because people can't determine, are you rotating the forearm or are you flipping it? And, to me, it's like, it's hard to tell when what's a flip versus a forearm roll. How do you differentiate the two?
Yeah, when you're looking at the video from face on and you see, where the people's hands are at impact, if you're leading, if the shaft is leaning forward and they're rotating the forearm, it won't flip. If the body slows down too much and the hands are actually backward and the wrists start to break and the handle's back too far, that's going to create a flip. So they do have to have, normal weight transfer, handle forward, and rotation, and that creates the solid strike.
Forearms crossing, and there's that release.
Now, we're discussing a lot about these different techniques and so on and so forth. Are there any things that you can universally work with all players in terms of their alignment, their pre-shot routine, things that aren't happening when you're over the ball or you necessarily while you're hitting the shot, but before you're hitting the ball?
Yeah, sort of the last step of working on with a great player, or someone who's becoming great, is once the swing starts to take shape, if they're a high school player, college player, if they're going to start competing a lot, they have to get into that pre-shot routine and really figure out a good routine for them. I interviewed Scott McCarron one time when it came to pre-shot routine, and Scott's had a great senior or Champions Tour career, and one of his best practices for himself is to really not work on his swing as much as he works on his routine. And that way, when you're working on your routine, you become very aware of where you are mentally when you're on the golf course. So a great tour player or a great player in general is going to have one or two swing thoughts per round, and they'll use that thought the entire round, no matter what. Even if they struggle during the round, they will not abandon it. They will stay with it. The average golfer out there has one swing thought a hole.
It's true.
Maybe one swing thought every shot.
What have you seen that's the most successful way to have this consistent, repeatable pre-shot routine that's effective?
I think the number one thing is you've got to get the golf club on the ground behind the ball without making your grip first. A lot of people put their hands on the club and then sort of take their stance and then lower the club down, and they're not really in the right position. Then they have to sort of wiggle around to get in position. And if you watch great players, they put the club on the ground behind the ball, they sort of settle in, and then they grip it. So, think about even Sergio. Like, does Sergio ever have a bad ball striking year? No. He's just good every year. But he gets the club on the ground behind the ball, settles in, then gets his hands on there, waggles and goes. Luckily, only one or two waggles now. But that really allows him the consistency. So great players will always set up, they build their stance around the club while it's on the ground behind the ball. And that gives you the right distance from the ball, get your alignment, you can check your feet, all that stuff before you ever really make your grip and get ready to go. But bad or more inconsistent players tend to just grip the club, stand in there, put the club down. And it's like, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Then they wiggle around. They kind of move left and move right, forward, backward, and then try to hit it. And it's very, very inconsistent when you don't have the club on the ground behind the ball.
What's the best way to make sure the club face is facing toward the target and you're setting yourself up correctly to the club face?
You have to learn, obviously, like you said, you've got to learn to get that club face aiming at your target. So using alignment rods or a club on the ground, very important. And looking at your feet is also incredibly important while you're getting set up. Most players will never look at their feet. They put the club down, they look at the target, but they never look at and see if their feet are lined up right. So having a stick along your toe line, having a stick out there maybe beyond the ball so you can kind of check the face angle, those are huge, huge components. I mean, when I was learning to play, I would use golf clubs on the ground on the course while I was playing just alone on the golf course to teach myself alignment. So I would set 2 clubs down or 3 clubs down to get myself lined up straight. I would do that over and over again to get my alignment dialed in.
What do you do about lining up your eyes? Because it's pretty easy to get your head cocked in the right position. Now all your visuals are off because your eyes are facing this way or they're a little bit facing across the line. Is there any drills or insight you can provide so that people have their eyes lined up parallel?
I think the more you are doing work with some reference tools on the ground, the better off you are there. And it also comes down to eye dominance. If you're left eye dominant, you're much more likely to have your head cocked more to the right, like Nicklaus or Faldo used to cock it to the right. I'm sure Tiger Woods is left eye dominant the way his head sets as well. Unless you're massively right eye dominant, most people don't really push the head forward, even though they're right eye dominant. They might have a slight bias that way. But I find that the head position tends to be much more of an issue with putting than it does for ball striking for whatever reason. People tend to look at that target and come back and somehow get the eyes lined up fairly well with a full shot. But for putting, wow, you do really see those eyes off the line a lot. And there it comes down to using a putting mirror that's on the ground right under your eyes to teach yourself to get those eyes lined up properly. Putting mirrors are just something that if you're an avid golfer and you don't have one, that's something that can really, really help you.
I know that you see Cam Smith swears by having that putting mirror all the time. That's definitely something for us all at home to consider, putting mirror. You know, it's great that you're able to provide us insight about alignment and pre-shot routine. How can folks at home reach out to you in case they want to get in contact with Mike Wilson Golf?
Best way to reach me is just through email. That's my preferred method. Just send it to mwgolf@gmail.com. Happy to answer any questions. And I love helping people out with their golf games. I've been doing it for 30 years. I love doing it.
Hey, welcome back. And in this video, it's all about how to get your swing working in the proper sequence on the downswing.
And people have questions all the time. And I love sending back emails and helping people with their games.
Folks, you heard it here first. Before we let Mike Wilson go, who is your favorite golf pro swing? Who has the best swing in your opinion?
I would say right now the best swing is probably McIlroy's swing. It's the best balance. The lines are pretty much perfect. He's on balance. He seems to hit it incredibly far for his size. In terms of just fun to watch, Patrick Reed's swing, hitting that draw all day is just a blast to watch that. He's such a shot maker as well. And in his day, of course, Tiger was the man, no question.
And I'm sure on your YouTube channel, you've broken down all of these swings.
Of course, yeah. That's one of the things I like to do is really break down the swings of pros from all different tours and help people understand, perhaps when they watch through those videos, if they're watching through them, they can get tips on their own swing as I go through those videos. So it's not just analysis of the player, but also some hints into how they can get better as well.
Folks, check out Mike Wilson Golf. His channel is awesome. I've been listening to his breakdowns for years. It's been an honor and pleasure having you on today, and let's do it again real soon.
Love to. Thanks, Big Boy Pants Golf. Great channel. Keep them coming with the great videos. And thanks again for having me on.
Awesome.
And the club face, like we talked about for a draw, has to be barely pointed off to the right to create that draw. Now the path is more to the right than the club face, which creates a draw. But because your club face is coming down more open, rotating to close and going back up again, it's nearly impossible to hit a shot over and over again with a dead square club face. So you're much better off purposely hitting a curving shot. Now, if you're losing power or looking for more power, hitting a draw more powerful for that type of player typically than a fade. So if you want to fade it, you certainly can. It's just swinging across with the face more open, it's going to create a fade. But to really create a great tee shot with some power and some tumble, some roll, it's getting that draw going. So your taller posture, just relax, normal posture. Club goes up on a normal line, more toe up. Gets up here, comes down, something like that. Swinging out to the right slightly and releasing. And what happens is, if you're always playing a curving shot, always playing a draw like a Patrick Reed, always playing some curving shot like Bubba Watson does, then you can plan for that curve such that if I'm playing a draw and I'm planning for a draw, I'm aiming slightly right. If I happen to not draw it, it just goes straight. So if I'm aiming right center of the fairway, it just goes in the right center of the fairway. If I'm right center of the green, it's still on the green. If I happen to overdraw it a little, same thing. I'm a little more to the left. Trying to hit a straight ball is nearly impossible. So coming down and trying to get the face dead square every single time on exactly the right path, like your tie buddy that was ripping the one plane action, it's very hard to do with a two-plane swing. Don't try. Try to hit fades or draws. My suggestion for power, though, is as we keep trying to get your weight forward, not your head, but your weight, and your hands forward more coming into impact, and you're purposely seeing shots curving this direction, it eliminates one sort of decision that you have to make before you hit a shot, which is if you're always trying to draw it, you don't have to try to worry about anything else. It's always a draw. And that draw, like we said, it's coming down more open, hands are in front, roll it over, toe back up in the air. More of an armsy feel, but you're still using your weight shift. Legs are still going first, but then it works something like that. And that's going to fit more in with what you did with Golf My Way. Nicholas trying to get up here more and then down and back up again. Much easier for you to master that type of a swing and just play for those draws. All right, hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll stay at it until we get that handicap down as low as you want to get it.